I was asking Matt, and he said I sounded better on my end this week.
You do sound better this week.
Okay, that makes me that brings me the joy and makes me the happy. I don't, like I said, I think when I redid my office last week and switched my stuff around, I'd been, because of the way the computer records, so like we use Zoom meetings to record now, and because of the way it works, it records you guys with the volume that I hear through my headphones, but it records me with the volume that, for some reason, it like feeds into my computer, so there's always a little bit of a distance. And it's funny because I'd been using my laptop to record on the Comic Book Bears part and just sending Bill the audio file, and it was doing the same thing over there. Like, my voice was just really low, but it's not really low on the YouTube link, like on the video, the live feed link. Like, I'm like, my levels are right there with everybody else. So it's just specifically something through the computer. And so I was trying to adjust for that, and I think I just over-adjusted it and made myself sound all
Well, you did a good job editing it. It came out fine.
Yeah, I went back and listened to it finally, and I was happy. I was happy with where it got. Now, obviously, that's not I was not happy overall with it, because I would have loved to have not had to done anything.
Right.
But I was happy with where we got to.
So, on other news, I lost about 5 pounds today. Shaved my facial hair.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
I just got the chin thing going on. The rest of it's gone.
The chin thing.
Yeah, I got hair on my chin, but I got rid of everything else.
Your chinny chin chin?
Yeah.
What spurred the great culling of the Craig face?
You get to a point where your mustache gets long, and you take a bite, and everything you eat ends up with facial hair in it. And it just enough was enough.
I'll never know. I'll never know what that's like.
Yeah, well, it's not fun.
Facial hair privilege.
Yeah, right. So that's me.
Man, I don't know about privilege.
Right.
So it's funny because everybody I talk to says kind of that same thing, and I get it. It's got to be a headache to, manscaping, keeping up with, keeping your facial hair kempt and everything. But I would just like the option. I don't have the option.
Yeah, I can get that.
It's like people with straight hair want curly hair, or people with curly hair want straight hair. You always want what you don't have.
Yeah. Well, and, because I associate so much and relate so much to the bear community, it's just funny because a lot of the people I hang out with they're the gay versions of Craig. They're the, hairy, kind of in their appearance,
huge hairy
masculine.
homos.
Right, but straight. You like the vagina and not the pee-pee. But here I am.
Is that the difference between gay and straight?
From the best of my ability to discern the difference, that's at least a large factor. But here I am looking like the naked mole rat of the gay bear community.
Bear community.
So I'll never know what it's like. I'll never know what it's. I'll never experience the joy of leaning in to kiss your husband and having your facial hairs tangle and pull each other as you pull apart like Velcro.
God, that sounds awful.
It does sound awful.
So how are you guys this morning?
I'm good.
Yeah,
Tired.
Sorry.
I got up late yesterday, and then Stephanie was gone for a portion of the day, and I decided to use that time to take a nap. So then I was up pretty much all night long.
Oh, man.
And then, so I'm pretty tired, but we'll make it.
I was up late. Yeah, I had a late night myself. I went to the shop to watch the wrestling.
I forgot about that.
Oh, I assumed you just weren't interested.
I mean, both.
I
did forget about
well, and
it.
Dykes wasn't there, so I didn't even ask you if you were going, Craig, because Dykes wasn't going to be there. I almost bailed myself, but I was so bored yesterday. I'm like, let me just get the hell out of the house. So I went, and it was okay. I mean, I went ahead and made myself stay to the end.
Now, for the folks at home, and totally not for me, who doesn't keep up with these things, what wrestling thing are you speaking of?
This was the All Elite Wrestling. pay-per-view, the Double or Nothing that happened last night.
So apparently this week's Dark Side of the Ring, was that Owen Hart's death?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Should have been a two-parter because there's so much to that story. But
yeah,
pretty incredible, man. Pretty incredible. I mean, it's, I knew of the story already, of course, because I remember when it happened. But there were parts of it that, I had never known to be made public before, most notably the harness, specifically the hook that he was hanging by. It's amazing that somebody thought it would be okay to hang this man 100 feet up in the air by a hook that was designed to be used on sailboats to secure sails to a mast.
Oh my God.
It is absolutely incredible. I don't know who the scumbag is that made that decision, that thought that was okay, but they didn't mention anything about that being person being charged with neglectful homicide or anything like that. It was incredible.
Crazy.
I need to go back so I haven't seen any of that. Is that getting transferred over to like Hulu or?
Yeah, it's on Hulu.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I
need to start watching it. And I guess, I'm not a wrestling fan per se, but it just a horribly tragic week for wrestling.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You had the one guy that saved his son and ended up dying. Drowning,
yeah.
Yeah. And then the other woman that killed herself over internet bullying.
Well, that's what that hasn't been confirmed yet, but that's what everybody believes happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
She was very, very young, 24, and some just stupid young.
Now, I heard about the gentleman who died, saving his son or having his son being saved first, but I didn't hear about the other story. That's terrible. Wow.
Yeah.
Right. It's
hard for you for this episode.
Well, in the wrestling, all these, what seems to be, because Tony and I were talking about it. Tony's like, well, I don't know what they're going to do for next season. I said, Tony, there are countless stories of tragedy in the wrestling business. And I named off, just top of the head, I named off how many. He's like, well, yeah, I guess you're right. And what it makes you stop and wonder is, and I know it's not one or the other, but which of it is more? Is it that this kind of thing, this kind of business, this kind of job attract, the people that are more prone to this reckless behavior and self-destructive behavior? Or is it more that it drives people towards that? You just can't help but wonder.
I think it's a combination. I think that lifestyle attracts a certain type of person.
Well, that's what I said. Yeah, that's what I said. It's not one or the other, but it makes you wonder which of it is it more.
Yeah. Well, and then you add steroid use in it with a lot of these guys people,
drug
and drug use in general.
Because the painkiller drugs are just as necessary. If not more so than steroids, because of the damage they do to their bodies. It's just incredible, the stories that come out of this business.
The lady's name that died was Hannah Kimura.
Mm. Well, I guess, anytime something like that happens, we just remind people that if you're, and it's prevalent to right now because folks are isolated and alone, and it's very depressing time. Reach out. There are suicide prevention hotlines that are readily available. And so if you're having a moment like that, reach out and talk to somebody, get some help, because that is a permanent end to a temporary problem, to use the cliche and, overly used phrase, but it's nonetheless true. So I hate that. I absolutely hate that.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Well, let's try to bring it up from here. Talk about some things that are a little bit happy making. This is episode 126 of the Southern Fried Geekery podcast. For those of you who have been listening for all 126 episodes and you know me, I am Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
Matt Trogdon.
And I'm Craig Lance.
And I am thrilled to be hearing your voices. This is always the highlight of my week. I miss you guys. I miss seeing you at the shop.
Yeah, I am ready for us to start recording together, but until Wendy's will open their dining room. I don't think it's
so
that is the. If Wendy's hasn't even opened their dining room, it's probably not time for us to record together.
What a benchmark for responsible social behavior.
Right? When Wendy's is smarter than 40% of the rest of the population, that tells you something.
Hey, look, on some level, I'm still surprised that Wendy's doesn't still have a smoking section because, that way the sign keeps the secondhand smoke from coming into your area.
Man.
I grew up in the time when that was a legit thing everywhere.
I remember my earliest days where there were still smoking sections everywhere. I was still part of that. I wasn't. My little brother's 10 years younger than I am, and he doesn't have those memories. So it's amazing how quickly things changed between 87 and 97.
If you go to Mississippi today, you still get asked that question, smoking or not.
It's a time machine.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of Mississippi. Never mind. I'm not going there.
You keep your funny laws off my lungs. I tell you, in Mississippi.
Freedom, America.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
There's a whole road we could go down with that, but we're not gonna.
We are not.
For those of you who
it is Memorial Day.
That is very true. For those of you who are new to the show, maybe you're just jumping in for the first time, and you're like, "Well, this has gone strange places because they're talking about wrestling and deaths, and now there's weird smoking sections and time machines in Mississippi. What is happening?" All of that is just tangential. That's just flavor. That's a little extra stuff we sprinkle in to make it fun. But
that comes free of charge.
Yeah, we don't. You can, but if you want to give us a donation, that's always acceptable. But no, we're a comic book podcast for the most part. We talk about the funny books, things that come out, sequential art that we know and love and enjoy reading, and we get together once a week, almost every week, to talk about these things and just see what each other are reading and just have a fun time with it. In the past few weeks, because of social distancing and because we are being responsible, we've actually shifted over to recording remotely, so we're all in our respective houses. But normally, when the world is right, we all get together and sit down at a table to enjoy each other's companies on a Sunday morning to talk about these things. But what that's allowed us to do the past few weeks is actually go and talk to a few creators that we are fans of. So if you want to go back and listen to some of the stuff that we have recorded, we had a great conversation with Jeremy Hahn. We had a great conversation with Justin Jordan. We're really going through the J's of comic creators for some reason.
Well, what was really great about both of those guys is that they did most of the talking. We did not have to lead them very hard down any paths.
No, these are insanely smart, insanely creative people with really interesting perspectives on art and storytelling and the industry, the business side of it. And once you just kind of direct them, you show them the pathway and they go running.
And both of them hit the ground running. Both of them came in ready to go.
It was really great. And so if you haven't listened to those episodes, you should absolutely go back and check them out, because I've even gone back and listened to them just to see, mainly to see how I fucked up, because that's what I do. Because there's always an opportunity to learn from the mistakes that are just readily available that I commit every episode.
You don't make mistakes, Caleb. You pay for lessons.
That's what it is. See, that's why we keep you around and pay you the big bucks, Matt. Because
I work for a guy that says we don't have problems, we have opportunities.
Love it.
That is the level of corporate speak to which I am not. I'm not yet ready to dive into.
So excellent.
So because of COVID, as most of you who read books in the direct market, who are kind of keeping up with that, know we ain't had a whole lot of new books come out lately, which is kind of sad. It's like I've missed having the little stacks in front of us, but that has let us catch up on some things, or to go find some comics in some other directions, which is fun, right? Like I've really enjoyed mowing just through the little. Like I keep a short box or a long box, depending on how much there is, like next to my office, next to my desk, my office, of stuff that I want to read. And I've actually I've cleared out a significant portion of it. It's been nice. And it's something that I don't think I'd be able to do if not for lack of influx of new comics. So there, a silver lining maybe, but it's been neat reading stuff that's been sitting there collecting dust that deserves to be read that I hadn't gotten done yet.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun to go back and read some trades and find some new stuff that's been out for a while that I haven't had a chance to read, because I think you said it last week, all three of us read a lot of comics every week.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it's hard to go back and find those old books or make time to read those older books. But it's something I am definitely going to try and set aside time for every week going forward.
Craig has been doing this thing, and Matt, I know you don't see because you don't dabble in the Facebooks, but he's been doing this thing, I think every Friday or Saturday, where he posts just a stack of stuff that he's read for the week. And it's like spurned some really great conversations, because we've had all kinds of people. I mean, some of the regular faces from our Facebook, like Bill Zanowitz or myself, and several others have posted what they're reading under it. So it starts this little conversation. Stephanie Straw commented on there. I'm trying to look at some of the different names of people who jumped in to tell us what they've been reading. And it really does start this cool little thread of conversation on our Facebook page, which is, it's nice because it's great to hear from other comics fans and comics readers who are part of our community. And if you want to be a part of that community, maybe you're not, you should totally get in the little search bar in the Facebooks and you type in Southern Fried Geekery, and it will lead you. It will hold your hand, and it will very gently lead you down the path to our Facebook group, where we are waiting for you, and ready to embrace you and bring you into the fold
in all the non-creepiest ways possible.
I'm not a cult leader. But no, we would love to have you. We also have a Instagram page and a Twitter page. We are at SFG Podcast on both of those. And last but certainly not least, we have a email, southernfriedgeekery@gmail.com, which you can send all of your questions, your comments, and your concerns. Maybe you have concerns for me. Maybe you're worried about me, and you want to say, hey, Caleb, how are you doing? Which would be lovely. I'd love to know that you care. You can send those to our email, and where I wait. I look at it every day and say, where's my email from people who care?
Do we get many emails?
No one cares.
No, see, I disagree with that interpretation. We're answering all the questions.
Maybe that's right. What it is.
Or they're communicating with us through other social media devices.
Yeah. So a lot of questions would mean a job left undone, and it's just not how we do it here.
We're thorough. we're like a well-trained lover. We're thorough. So one thing we have gotten that actually our email is been really useful for is upcoming creators, or folks who are launching Kickstarters or have projects coming out. They do email us on there and say, hey, like, I've got this upcoming project coming out. Could I maybe talk about it on your show? And we've got a few of those coming up, which that's behind the scenes stuff that we need to chit chat about and get dates lined out. But that's been, so if you're a person who is a comics creator and maybe you're looking for a way to talk about your new project, your new book that's coming out, let us know. We'd love to have you on and talk about what we're doing and what you're doing, mainly because that's the point of talking to you.
I can't wait for the third and final chapter of Crimson Rider.
Oh, that book. It's so good. So good. But enough all that. Let's get that behind us. That's all the housekeeping. Like, that's just us tidying up, making sure we've got a clean room to sit and talk about comics in. So let's talk about comics. How do you guys feel about that?
Word.
We're here. We should go ahead and do it.
That's kind of what I was thinking. It's what we showed up for, right? You know who hasn't gone first in the talking about comics part in a long time? Matt. I feel like Matt has not been the one to lead us off in a hot minute. So I want Matt to go first and tell us what he read this week.
So mine's going to be kind of brief. As I've mentioned before on the show, I have a habit of rereading the True Believers reprints. So once again, along that theme, I read the Savage She-Hulk #1 reprint. So this issue came out in 1980. It's written by Stan Lee, and the art is by the great John Buscema. and the inking was done by Chick Stone, which is an actual person. I made sure and look that up. Chick Stone's an inker actually had been around for quite a long time, back in the gold and silver era.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I'm going to get into this issue and then talk a little bit about the history of why this actually happened, which I think is just this character's always been interesting to me, and how this character came to be is also really interesting. So this issue opens up with Bruce, and it's funny because this issue happened at the height of the success of the TV show, The Incredible Hulk. Look it up, kids. The character's name in the TV show was not Bruce Banner. It was David Banner.
That's right.
So the first thing you read when you open up this comic book is a blurb, again, written by Stan Lee, says, "Call him David or Bruce or Bob. What does it matter? The important thing is, until today, the tormented Dr. Banner was unlike any other human on Earth. Till today, for on this day begins the startling saga of a secret revealed, a tragedy shared, and a monster a-borning. Stanley making up his own words. So Bruce is in L.A. for his cousin, looking for his cousin Jennifer Walters. She is now, he is hoping now that she is a lawyer, she will be able to help him. He would like her to represent him when he turns himself into authorities. He feels completely burned out from a life on the run. He finds her, and once he confesses to being the Hulk, she of course agrees to help him. But it is soon revealed that she is in the middle of representing a hood named Moncton. She is defending Moncton on a murder charge of which he has been framed. He's actually accused of killing the bodyguard of another criminal ne'er-do-well named Nick Trask. She's explaining her defense strategy to Bruce as she drives them both to her home. Once they arrive, as they're getting out of the car, she is actually shot in the back by some hoods of Trasks who have been tailing them. The hoods flee, and Bruce picks up Jennifer with the intent to get her medical attention. However, her injuries are critical, and he has no time to wait for an ambulance or drive her to the hospital. Luckily with all capital letters, there's a doctor's office across the street from Jennifer's house. And it is after hours, so he breaks in and gives her a blood transfusion himself. After he has done so, he then calls the police to report the crime and get Jennifer to the hospital. He flees custody once the police try to detain him for questioning while Jennifer is recovering. Upon awaking in the hospital, the Hoods show up in Jennifer's room to finish the job of killing her. And this, of course, is the time when she transforms into the savage She-Hulk and dispatches with the Hoods quite easily, as you can imagine. So it's a pretty typical cookie cutter type issue, origin issue. The reason this even happened was because of the Incredible Hulk TV show. Did you guys know this?
I did not.
I knew of this. I've heard the kind of the legend. I never actually heard it like laid out though. So I knew it was inspired by something that happened in that early iteration. Because it's on, like, if you look up lists, it's like, comics that inspire movies or movies that inspire comics. This is usually on there. I don't think I've ever actually unfolded the detail though.
Yeah, the reason this story was thrown together last minute because Stan Lee either got wind of or got suspicion of the studio that was making the Incredible Hulk TV show creating a female version of the Hulk, because this kind of thing had been done before with like the $6 Million Man. After the success of the $6 Million Man show, the Bionic Woman show was born. So he was afraid that this television studio was going to do the same thing with the Hulk character. And if they did that, they would own the rights to the She-Hulk character.
Mm-hmm.
So he rushed this story to print so that Marvel could lay ownership to the character before the TV show could do so. It's the only reason it happened.
That's smart business practices.
Yeah. So
it would have been smarter to write it into the contract for the television rights, but hey, it worked. We got a great character out of it.
Yeah. So, this issue was rushed, thrown together, rushed to print. The Savage She-Hulk continued on. They just, after this issue was out, they put together a different creative team.
Mm-hmm.
Her first, following that, her first long-running solo series was actually written and illustrated by John Byrne.
Mm-hmm.
That was during the 80s. And it was a comedy series. And it actually satirized the comic book industry. And She-Hulk, on a regular basis, broke the fourth wall.
Mm-hmm.
For all you Deadpool fans out there that think he's the one that brought that to light. Actually, John Byrne did that with She-Hulk long before. When I was a kid, I've got a couple of those issues from the 80s. And
I've got lots of issues from the 80s.
Yeah. We heard about the mascara. And the art is great. Everybody, John Byrne, as we all know, in his work. And as a kid, I really liked looking at the comic, but I did not like the comic itself because it was just silly. And it just felt like they weren't using the character for what she could have been when I was a kid. So I bought a few of them as a kid, and then I just quit because I'm like, this is just silly. They're not treating her with any kind of respect and making it compelling.
I've read all of those issues, and yeah, I tend to agree with that now, but that's also with the benefit of having read, Sensational She-Hulk and all the She-Hulk stuff that's came since then. And so, which is always the lens through which I read comics that were done in the 70s or the early 80s or stuff like that, because I, wasn't there when they were first coming out. Like, you always read them through having the benefit of hindsight and see what's happening with the character. So I don't know how I would have felt about that as it was coming out. But at the same time, you look at things like Howard the Duck, which was similar in that vein of breaking the fourth wall and satirizing everything, what the work that was being done on Mad Magazine. And I forget the name of it. Marvel had their own version of Mad Magazine that they were trying to put out. It's where stuff like Four Bush Man.
Was it Cracked?
Cracked. That's it. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm personally glad that they moved the character of She-Hulk away from that. Every so often they dip back into it where they try to remember, or they remind you of where she came from in that origin. But yeah, and John Byrne did the bulk of moving her away from it with Sensational, was Sensational. Was that late 80s or was that early 90s?
Well, it started in the 80s and went 60 issues, so I can only assume it went. It might have went into the early 90s, but I don't know. But yeah, the Sensational is the one that broke the fourth wall. It was satirized. It was It was a comedy book, and it's not like that's a bad idea. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. It's just I wanted to see what I wanted to see in She-Hulk, what I saw in the Incredible Hulk. And I just felt like the character was being completely underutilized by just turning it into a comedy book. You could have made, I felt like just about any character could have been in She-Hulk's place in those books.
Right. I can see that. Especially, again, in the vein of having read Dan Slott stuff. So Dan Slott was the person who wrote and I'm using air quotes here, but wrote my version of the She-Hulk, simply because it's the first version I really ever committed to memory to ever read through. And she was she was much more of a persona in that book than in the earlier stuff, and her character was much more fleshed out, still breaking the fourth wall and stuff, but doing so in a way that it wasn't. It was more of a conversation with the reader than it was a haha funny. Here's a neat little, Mad Magazine trick that we're going to do for you to laugh at. And a lot of that came from the John Byrne stuff, because I read the Dan Slott stuff before I read John Byrne. So I was like, if I've gone back and read John Byrne stuff, that stuff is there, like those seeds are planted. And later in the series, like you said, I think the one that, because there was Savage She-Hulk and then there was Sensational She-Hulk, and I forget which one. And I'm a bad nerd. I'm just not looking it up on the internet right now because I'm lazy.
Byrne did Sensational.
Byrne did Sensational.
Yeah.
So Savage She-Hulk was, if I remember right, it's been years since I've read it. That was always, to me, that series tried to be more of the Hulk, but more of like a sexy version of the Hulk. And I not just in its visage, but in the way the book was written, which is interesting because if you look what's being done with the character now, they're getting away from the sex appeal of the character and getting more into tying her.
Says you.
Well, that's true. They really are tying her more into the savagery and the instability of the Hulk persona. Mariko Tamaki. A lot of people didn't like Mariko Tamaki's run. I actually thought it was fun in its entirety. I think issue to issue it struggled because it was definitely written to be read as a bulk unit and not monthly, which is the way it was presented through the direct market. Go back and read it now as one cohesive unit, and it actually is a really compelling, really great story where Jennifer is losing touch with her humanity. Completely lost touch with it, and then that rolls into what Jason Aaron is doing with her now, which I think Jason Aaron is much, at this point in history, is better equipped to writing superhero stories than Mariko Tamaki was at the time, and that's not knocking against her. She just comes from the world of graphic novels. She did This One Summer. Like, all of her books are, they're mostly YA stuff up until that point, but they're, they deal with the, as Matt likes to say, the fifis. And they really are, they're not character driven, or they're not plot driven as much as they're character studies and trying to dive into understanding the world. And I think she brought a lot of that with her to a She-Hulk story, which needed, issue to issue, needed more plot than it got and more action than it got. It was kind of a slow-paced story.
Jason Aaron is one of the best character-driven writers on the market today.
Yeah.
So he's going to outdo just about anybody when it comes to writing a story from a compelling character standpoint. In my opinion, anyway. I mean, I think he's incredible how well he can nail each individual character and make it compelling.
Right, and he also has the benefit of not writing her in a solo series where the spotlight is inherently on her. He's writing her as part of a team, where he can take key elements that other people created. He picks them up out of the sandbox. Several things that Mariko did, and he stuff that Dan Slott did, stuff that John Byrne did, and he can dip them into the world where they also are juxtaposed with these other figures from the Avengers who have their own stuff going on. And that just makes it, to me, that adds some texture, and it takes a little bit of the spotlight off of her, but it also takes a little bit of the I don't know what you'd call it, the stress off of getting that, which is always something that happens in a team book, right? Like you can spread it around a little bit, you can balance it out to make it fun. But
exactly,
who is your now, because I've talked about Dan Slott, but who is your quote unquote She-Hulk writer or artist for that matter?
As an art, no, there's not one artist that really jumps out at me. When it comes to the character, I can't really name an artist that I really feel that strongly about. As far as the writing goes, the way Jason Aaron has written her in Avengers, I think is awesome. Loved it. Absolutely loved the way he wrote the character. Is writing the character in the Avengers.
Yeah, I second that. This is my favorite iteration of the She-Hulk, is what we have right now.
Yeah.
unsurprisingly, from anybody who knows me, when it comes to an art aspect, George Perez has drawn her in ways that I just love. I absolutely adore. But he's also following the Byrne model of like the skinny, slender bombshell, more so than what she is now, where she's drawn in the way that Byrne drew her, and Perez and Babillo, all of those guys drew her. She was statuesque. You know, she was a model. She was very fit, and you know, you could tell that she spent some time in the gym. But like that version of her, I think, did more cardio than muscle building. The way she's being drawn now is more in line with actual female bodybuilders. People who like women who are putting on bulk versus tone. I mean, she's toned, don't get me wrong, but like there's actual there's like when you look at her, you're like, oh yeah, she can actually bench press a car.
Well, she looks like a Hulk.
Yeah, versus some of the other versions of her where she could bench press a car, but you didn't really see that. And her bust, to be polite, was voluptuous, and it was much more. That is not what women who dedicate a lot of time to burning fat and lifting weights look like without implants. So it's more of a honest representation, I think, of women who lift the weights and put in a lot of the time to have like negative body fat.
I mean, yeah, I mean, she's being drawn right now as a Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
For probably the first time in, a really long time. And then you take the character development that they've done with her, which, as you said, has been a honest progression from what they did in the last Hulk run. And it's just, we're getting the best She-Hulk we've had.
I loves it. I really do. I think Jason Aaron's doing a fantastic job, which that's, we say that about anything Jason Aaron's writing, right? So that's
for the most
surprising.
Part. Yeah, no. Yeah. There's times.
He's a strong. I mean, everybody has their moments, but he's not.
Oh, yeah.
He's not Hickman, but he's a
nobody.
strong writer.
Nobody bets 1,000.
Nah, not even Al Ewing, who I adore. We got anything else on the? Now, was this? You said this was the dollar reprint, Matt. Was this the? Did it have all of the ads and the ephemera from the age that didn't?
Yeah, it's not the facsimile edition.
Gotcha.
They're all fun though. All of the old reprints are fun.
You love these reprints. You and Craig both do. I haven't been getting them as much. Are there any books that haven't been done this way that you would like to see Marvel do the reprints of?
That's a hard question to answer because I know if I pick one, I'm probably told it's already been done. I just don't know about it.
That's true.
I would like to see a lot of the old Claremont X-Men run key issues in that be done as the dollar reprints. Marvel's been on a kick for a while now where most of their dollar reprints have been in the Avengers storylines. Because what's promoting them to reprint these issues is to generate interest in an event that's either going on now or coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And, or a character.
And or like, if there's a new character season, you'll have, or a new character that season series starting. They'll do a reprint of the character's origin.
Right.
But, this reprint was done to promote the Empire storyline that's going on right now at Marvel. And the last run was, the previous. So that's where a lot of their energy has been going for these dollar reprints. I would like to see it go into the X universe storyline, I should say.
Yeah, I would like to see that as well.
There's so many key issues, in that Claremont X-Men run that they could do. And a lot of them have been done already. It's not that they've totally ignored them. It's just they focused on this Avengers storyline primarily.
I like it when they do, and She-Hulk is kind of a good example of this, where they do the secondary characters, because everybody knows the origin of Captain America. Everybody knows the origin of Spider-Man. So it's neat to me when they take characters, like just off the top of my head, people like Quasar, and they throw them into the mix. I would love it if they would do one that's got my buddy Dennis Dumfrey, D-Man. If they wanted to do his origin, that'd be awesome. So yeah, sticking with the secondary and tertiary characters from the Marvel Universe seems to me to be it's just fun because you don't remember those characters a lot. Like they don't get the spotlight all the time. Um, I'm going back through and reading the Ostrander run on Heroes for Hire, and it's cool seeing some of the side characters. I mean, they've kind of been brought back into focus because of the Netflix series a few years ago, but it's cool seeing some of those characters brought out and just played with because we haven't. At least not that I've any of the series I've read. We haven't gotten much Misty Knight, and we haven't gotten much Daughters of the Dragon brought in.
Did you read the Heroes for Hire post Civil War?
I don't know if I did or not. I don't think I have.
Yeah, you should pick up that run too.
Nice.
Misty Knight's been in the Captain America run that Tanisha Coates has been doing.
Yeah, because she's leading the kind of what are they called, the
Daughters of Liberty.
Daughters of Liberty. Yeah, she's such a badass. She really is. I love her. Well, Craig, why don't you go, buddy? What have you been reading?
So I chose the book that I'm going to talk about because of Memorial Day weekend and because I love this book. So, and I actually had this on the menu book a couple of weeks ago, but it's the Nom #1, published by Marvel in 1986, written by Doug Murray, artist. Pencils and colors was Michael Golden, and inks by Armando Gil, with letters by Phil Felix. And an important note to this is that it was edited by Larry Hama, which, back at that point in time and probably forever, any war story should be edited by Larry Hama. So this book starts with PFC Ed Marks fresh out of boot camp saying goodbye to his parents in January of 1966 as he heads to his first station at Fort Lewis. Once there, along with the other wet noses, as they call them, they get their shots and make sure that they have all the gear they're going to need for deployment. And within 2 days, they are loaded up and deployed to Vietnam. As they attempt to land in Saigon, their plane is shot up pretty badly, but does make the landing. And as they're unloading these soldiers frantically from the plane, they've got fire trucks coming and trying to put out the fire, and they're loading these guys up and getting them out as quick as they can. They get to base. The base is the headquarters for the 23rd Infantry, mechanized, of course. I don't know why they keep saying that, but it keeps saying mechanized, of course. So that must have been a real thing that was going on because it was in the book probably 2 or 3 times. Marx is round up for another medicine, which is malaria medicine this time. I'm going to assume it was hydroxychloroquine because, that's what we should all be taking. Not. Following that, he reports to his first sergeant, who asks him for a bribe for a cushy assignment, but Marx doesn't really understand what the first sergeant is asking, so he's sent to what we can only assume is the worst of all squads, as he is informed that the first sergeant hates that group. After he is introduced to the squad and his sergeant, Polkow, we find out that he's actually a good guy who takes care of his troops, and that is in fact why the first sergeant hates him and is a good sign for his future. But Marx is informed that they will be heading into the bush the next morning at 04:30, so to get some rest and get prepared. He's taken under the wings of one experienced soldier, Mike Albergo, who teaches him, and of course us, the reader, the terms that they were using at the time, as well as basic Vietnam warfare. And soon they find themselves in a firefight in which he gets his first kill, and he's told not to worry about it. The first one is always the hardest. Later, they are picked up by some helicopters and taken back to the base. So this entire book happens within a couple of days if you subtract the air flights. So this guy graduates boot camp, says goodbye to his family, goes to a base, immediately gets prepared to fly out, lands in Vietnam. The very next day he's on the front line fighting. So, you know, this book is very powerful in that it explains to you kind of what was happening to these people at the time. And, you know, I don't know what you can say about the art in this book if you haven't seen Michael Golden's art, but it's absolutely brilliant. He shows emotion, especially fear and shock, just amazingly in this book, and colors it beautifully. And Murray does such a fantastic job of painting a horrific first few days in Vietnam with a storytelling, while giving the reader a way to get insight into the world without it feeling so forced that, you know, that was his intention. But this has been a book since it came out that I've just absolutely adored. This entire run was really good, and Marvel, please put it in an omnibus format for us.
I'm really surprised that they haven't done that yet. If they, I know that there's been collections, but
the first 3 trades are still available, but I don't know if they're still in print. You can find them on Amazon.
Yeah.
But you can't find the entire collection anywhere other than, you know, going and buying dollar books or whatever to get them all. Mm-hmm. And I think it's like the last 10 or 15 are really hard to find because they brought Punisher into them. Mm. And so Punisher fans have collected them and held on to them over the years, which was a kind of a neat way to tie this real world thing into the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
By bringing Punisher in at the end. But and you know, gives us Punisher's origin. Lots of good stuff in this run. I think the first 10 issues were illustrated by Michael Golden.
And that's some of Michael Golden's best work. Like, I know you said, you know, what can you say about Michael Golden? Because we've seen him, the stuff he's done with, you know, the Avengers,
yeah,
and everything else in Michael Golden's history. But even that aside, this stuff has always been elevated. The stuff in Nom has always been elevated above his other work to me.
I mean, these first 10 issues are some of the just highlights of his career, in my opinion.
Yeah,
it's so well done. The way, like I said, the way he shows expression on this character's face is you're experiencing this first 2 days in Vietnam with this guy. Mm-hmm. You know, and you feel it. You feel his pain and his shock and his shell shock from having to make his first kill.
Well, and with his expressions, I always felt like it's there is a link, and it's not a direct link, but it's 2 or 3 steps down. There's always been a link from Golden to Neil Adams with his expressions in my mind. Like, I can always see some of the work that Neil Adams was doing in his facial features that not too many people were doing at the time. And I mean, he's got a look that is indicative of that era, but
right.
It's very much not I don't think it's fair to call it the house style of the time, because he's doing, like, there's something in there with the, you know, just the weight of his line, and like you said, the ability to pull out of an expression that's not necessarily a given, like that's not like right. You can't model that,
right.
But to me, and I would love to, and I'm sure they've spoken about it somewhere. I've just got to go find the interviews, but I kind of wonder what notes that Hama gave to the creators on this.
So in this book, speaking directly to that, they discover some tunnels. Mm-hmm. And I am very certain that Hama gave them information about the tunnels, because that's in fact what he did when he was in Vietnam.
Yeah, and that's where, like, even outside of the facial expressions, I think a lot of what elevates this work for Golden above some of Golden's other work are his landscapes and the natural element of the Nam.
Well, and the fact that he colored this book himself too, and it's vibrantly, I cannot say that word, vibrantly colored for such an emotional impact. You know, because Vietnam is a beautiful country. and you see all of that, but then you also see this horrific war taking place in the background of it. This book has always had an impact on me, and maybe it's because of my age and when I grew up. I was born towards the end of the Vietnam War, and I really don't remember it, but it was still a huge part of culture for me as in my early childhood, especially. That when this book came out, they tried to make some television shows about the same time, and people kept saying, I don't think the world's ready for Vietnam storytelling, but they were. It just had to be done right.
There has to be an authenticity to it. And
yes.
I think that there, again, obviously I wasn't there, but I think that they're, having spoken to people who are vets, because this book is largely beloved among people who have a military history.
Right.
Like there is an authenticity to this book that it comes through the filter of Larry Hama, and no, that's not taking away from the storytelling ability of anybody who worked on this book, but the impetus is Larry Hama, and it's the same thing that he brought to his G.I. Joe work that made that series just people just latched onto it, because there's a truth to it that everyone can connect to, but especially those who've seen it, that you can't really describe unless you're utilizing either your own experience or you're very close to the experience of people who have been there.
Well, what the world wouldn't have been ready for was a MASH type story.
Right.
If you tried to take this and put it into a comedic drama like MASH was, it would have never worked. But doing it authentic really gave that depth to it that it needed. And I feel like the first 10 issues covered his first year in Vietnam, because their tour of duty was a 1-year tour. So after that year, they'd get shipped back home. Well, he got back to the States. The Private Marks gets back to the States, and he cannot deal with the real world anymore, and actually signs up for a second tour and goes back, which happened to a lot of these soldiers.
Shell shock and PTSD, which they weren't talking about.
Well, they just didn't know how to deal with real world, because there's, one thing we don't do a good job of is teaching soldiers how to readapt to the real world when they get back. And, we turn them into these fighting machines that they have to survive. But when you get back, how do you deprogram that, I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah, integrate.
So that they can readapt to the world. And sometimes we haven't done that. And the book deals with that very well later on.
Well, what's interesting, if you read, which I've done, if you read a lot about a soldier's experience, there's a lot of reasons when some soldiers get home, they have trouble adjusting. The overriding one that I've read about is they feel like, so they've done their 4 years, or they've done their 1 year, or they've done whatever their length of duty is. However, they've left their, quote, brothers behind when they came home. And while they're sitting at home, when they are sitting at home, all they can think about is the danger that their brothers are in, and they're not there with them. So they'll re-sign up they'll re-sign up to get back with their boys. That's the way an overwhelming majority of them feels. They feel survivor guilt, or guilt from not being there for their brothers. And that's, you read about that over and over again, how a soldier can kill. Well, they're not there. It's a myth that any given soldier is there for the red, white, and blue. They're there because of their fellow. Yeah, they're there because of their fellow soldiers. They're advancing because of their men.
Yeah.
So it's interesting when you read about that. In that series, it touches that in a few different ways, because as the series goes on, it switches characters from different arcs. My favorite one is the death of Joe Howland. That was a great arc. That one was illustrated by Joe Kubert. That was late in the run.
Yeah. So rereading this first issues made me want to go back and reread the entire series, because I don't actually think I ever finished the series.
Well, it's hard to get them.
Out.
It's hard to find them. But
they are on Comixology, so that's where I'm going to go to find them.
As the series progresses, I think the last 25% of the run is the best.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I think once you get to those last 25% of the run, they're great, man. I mean,
you know who's in the last 25% of the run?
Yeah, Punisher. I think he's actually only in about 10 issues, but I might be wrong.
He's less than 10, actually.
Yeah,
it's like 5.
Yeah, I just have to give Matt shit.
Yeah, I'll
own up to that. Of course, that's where he likes. That's his favorite.
Well, he makes 2 appearances and 2 different writers, and one of them's really good. The other one's okay. One of them just kind of feels like he's being used as a, just kind of dropped in there with no point. The other one is, it's got some gravity to it, definitely, and it comes across as more of a realistic soldier's experience, not comic book character being dropped into this series. The one of them feels very commercial. The other one feels more authentic.
Well, and I mean, that's the way you have to do it if you're going to bring him in, right? You need to make it authentic. You have an authentic war story. Bring him in and make him that war hero that turned him into what he was when he got back.
Well, and that's the thing, is that's what makes it so authentic to me, is he's not treated like a war hero. He's treated like a soldier, a grunt, a very realistic experience of a grunt.
Well, and that's what I mean by war hero, just somebody over there doing their job, putting in their time. To me, that's a war hero. It's
very similar in tone to what Enos did with Bourne, which is my favorite Frank Castle story. He is.
Mine is Frank and Castle.
He didn't do Frank and Castle. Frank.
Sorry.
So
before that happened, with Bourne, that's kind of what you get, is that it is about what's happening on the hill. It is about Frank just being a soldier, and it ties into his family, but part of that family are the people that he's fighting over, not necessarily for, but he's fighting over the bodies of his brothers, of these other people who were part of his command or who were just part of his unit, and he refuses to let that ground become sacred for him. He refuses to let the enemy on that ground. And there's a supernatural tone to it, of course, because there always is. And it's not even necessarily because it's a Marvel story. I think with any good story, whether you're talking about Band of Brothers or whether you're talking about any like the Nam or anything, there's almost a supernatural tone to it. There's almost a guiding hand floating over the story that gives it that certain flavor, je ne sais quoi, like whatever you want it to be, that really that elevates it from just being this is about a guy going through some shit. There's
I disagree with that completely. I think it's a very, quite literally boots on the ground story about the human experience in war.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but if you and I not that I even agree with this statement, but what's the old saying? There's no atheist in foxholes. There's something, and maybe supernatural was the wrong turn of phrase, but there's in what I've read of the Nam, and in if you read Punisher Bourne, there's this almost a guiding hand over it, like you can.
But no. So Punisher Bourne and the Nam are 2 completely different views of the experience over there. Punisher Bourne is, now a lot of people interpret the voice in Punisher Bourne as the devil,
or Mephisto.
Yeah, but I think that is not how Garth Ennis writes, and I think if you interpret it that way, you don't know what you're reading, because that is not the way Garth Ennis writes, and it sure as hell, he is never ever going to put a supernatural element into a war story. He has come out several times saying he hates it when people do that. He hates it when there's superheroes in war stories. He thinks it's insulting to soldiers. He thinks Captain America is the most offensive comic book character in existence.
Mm-hmm.
So if you eliminate all these things, knowing about his approach on those things, and you read Punisher Born, that is about a man who, frankly, is battling his own compulsion to kill. Frank Castle does not want to go home. He wants to kill. He's there to kill the enemy, and he has no interest in not doing anything other than that. And the voice, and if you interpret the voice that way, that is his own internal battle telling him just embrace it. He's fighting it and staying in war to where he can appease that compulsion. And the voice is telling him to just stop worrying about how do you appease it. Just embrace it and essentially become evil. And I think that story does a great example of illustrating to the idiots that think the Punisher is a hero.
Right. But and I like that part. I don't. There's no disagreement on there. I think where you and I separate and part ways on that is I do think that whether you want to call it God, whether you want to call it, and I'm not connecting to a ghostwriter, but a spirit of vengeance, whether you want, and that vengeance for the people who killed his, quote unquote brothers, his family. There is for me, when I read that, and again, I'm not saying this is any kind of Judeo-Christian aspect of it, but there is a God in that book. There is a higher power, which these soldiers, be it Frank Castle or the people in the Nam, there is something that's just off the page, that's just off the narrative, and it's never per se mentioned, and it's never directly
by just. How many
credited.
miles off the page do you mean by just?
I think it's there. I think it's just to the. I think it's just to the left side. It's in everything. Be it luck, be it fate. Maybe fate's a better word for it. But there's something that is. It is just to the left of the story, but its influence is there, at least for me, when I read the story. And part of that may be interpreting this idea that in war, God is in the soldier, or the fate is in the soldier, or it's in the hands of a person who's making or breaking their own future. But I don't know that I can read that, and again, purely from my perspective, without envisioning something that's always connected to it. And I say that as a person who's an atheist. So, I don't believe in a higher power for myself, and that's I'm not trying to offend anybody who is religious at all. I think belief is for the individual. But when I read this story, I can there is something, and again, like I said, I called it supernatural earlier, but I think that maybe be the wrong turn of phrase. But there is something more than holistic there that is meant to give a lens, give some influence to the story.
I disagree. There's the length of my retort.
Oh, but and that's fair, but that's where interpretation comes in.
Yeah. Like I said, you can find this book anywhere on Comixology. They have it. I was actually surprised that they did not have it on Marvel Unlimited for whatever reason. But you can get it on Comixology, which is probably where I will pick it up and finish reading it, because I intend to read the entire series again. Go out and read it if you enjoy Vietnam War stories. This is about as real as it gets, in my opinion.
Well, it is. Let's be honest. It's a very good story. It's a good representation of the experience. But let's be honest, it is watered down and sanitized.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So you're gonna, when you go in with the expectation that this is a sanitized, version of the experience.
There you go.
It's just, what they could get away with at the time before there was a Max line. Therein lies the value of the Marvel Max line, where they don't have to sanitize it.
Right.
As I think is the case with any recreation or reproduction of a story that's being produced for mass market.
Well, certainly in a story during the 80s that was done in the main Marvel line, it's going to be, as Matt says, sanitized to some extent.
It's really incredible that series has lasted as long as it did, frankly. It's really incredible it lasted as long as it did.
Yeah, close to 10 years, right?
Yeah, because it was not a big seller. It was not a big seller.
Which is probably why we never got an omnibus for it.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, it was just not, it just did not have big numbers.
Well, again, I don't think people were quite ready for Vietnam War stories. That shortly after this, you started getting tour of duty, and I'll let you go here in a second, but you started getting tour of duty, Platoon, Hamburger Hill, things like that. But when this first started, those things weren't around.
Yeah, well, war comics have never been big sellers in the States.
There's that, yeah.
You know, in England and Europe, you know, they were big sellers, but in the States, they just never have been. Unfortunately, you know, the only one, that's why nobody writes them, is because they just do not sell. Garth Ennis will write one occasionally, only because he loves to write them. He openly admits that any war story he writes doesn't sell. And the only reason he writes Punisher war stories is so he can get someone to publish a war story that he does. He's openly admitted that. He just uses the Punisher. He loves the character. He openly says he loves the character, but he'll create a war story with Frank Castle just so he can have a war story published. I'm just glad that he does so with the Vietnam era, because the Vietnam War is written about much less frequently than, say, World War II.
Yes.
More frequently than the Korean War or World War I, but the Vietnam War experience was so very different in this country's history than any other war experience.
It's more so politicized than any other.
Well, I mean the boots on the ground experience of the actual, the way the war was fought and the effect on the soldiers themselves, and the way that the soldiers were viewed by the public versus how they were viewed in the public in the past of the World War II, Korean War. Completely different, just a completely different war experience. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah, it really is. It's an interesting and horrific time in the American history.
I gotta follow this shit.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't like it. Going first next time. This is bullshit. Well, my book is not nearly as storied or legendary in the world of comics, and that's because it's as I twiddle my fingers, it's a new book. It's a book that just came out this past week as the books are starting to flow. There is a series that started before COVID sent everything to shit, that I thoroughly enjoyed, because it's a different take on a concept. It's a Kirby concept that I've ever seen before. And that series is DCeased. So DCeased was its own 6-part miniseries, written by Tom Taylor. Off the top of my head, I don't remember who the artist was on that, and I probably should, and that's my fault. You know, it's not like I had time to prepare or plan on doing a podcast or anything. But because it wasn't, it's not the series I actually wanted to talk about, so I didn't. There is a spinoff.
Because it was requested?
It is a little bit because it was requested. On our Facebook page, our buddy, he goes by Castro. That's his stage name. He's a local hip hop artist. But our buddy Mike said, "Hey, if you dudes don't talk about this book, which is none other than DCeased Unkillables," he was going to get mad. And
I think his quote was, "You're all fucking dead to me."
Yeah, pretty much something like that. I don't want to piss Mike off, because Mike is about 280 pounds of muscle that could literally throw me across the state. So I'm going to talk about this book under threat of duress, if nothing else. But no, I'm going to talk about it because I absolutely loved this series. And it's the third issue of 3, so it's wrapped up, of DCeased Unkillables, which is written by Tom Taylor. It is drawn beautifully by Carl Mostert, I think is how you pronounce his last name. Inks by Trevor Scott and Neil Edwards, and Mostert kicked in a little bit of ink work in that too. Colors by Rick Slocus, letters by Francesco Mattina and Tasia MS, which I'm not sure what the MS stands for, but it was in the book, so I thought I would say it. And when I say this is a Kirby concept, so little backstory to the entire DCeased line. Like, what you need to know is that essentially Kirby's fourth world invention of the anti-life equation, it has kicked in, and the way it's kicked in is it has used the technology of the 21st century, the things that we depend on to do. Like, we'd be fucked because, you know, I'm on the internet right now and we're doing everything to record a podcast, and we live on our cell phones, and we can't help but to tune into Netflix. Like, there's just technology all around us that's connected to a universal worldwide web. And that's how the anti-life equation infects everybody. It actually comes through Cyborg, and it launches itself through the internet to corrupt and destroy, and to turn everybody into these. It's a little bit of a concept, kind of like Crossed, right? Like it's like these people aren't zombies. It's not a direct analog to the Marvel zombies, but they're just insane psychopathic murderers, and it affects everybody. Right? It completely decimated the world as we know it, as according to the DC universe. And in the main series, you get, you know, Superboy actually has to save the day, but you know Superman ends up getting infected. But there's a group of DC people, as is the truth with I think any superhero universe, that they were kind of untouchable in a way from this virus, and that's because they can heal themselves. They have their you know, if Wolverine was a part of this world, he would be a member of this group, but of course he's not because this is DC and Wolverine doesn't get to play in the DC universe. But this group of people are individuals that are, of course, they're metas in some way. They they have maintained the ability to uh, stave off this virus, even though it's all around them. And they're led by, you know, there's Solomon Grundy, there's Deathstroke, Cheetah's a part of this group, Lady Shiva, Deadshot, the Crawler, or I always call him the Crawler, the Creeper. Like they're all a part of this group, and these
Jerry dies a little bit inside every time.
I know, and you know, he doesn't. I'm just a disappointment to him, which is really all. Like, that's kind of par for the course. But all of these figures have been able to kind of stay on the run, and so what happens in DC's Unkillables is they end up finding their way into an orphanage, so to speak. But this is not a regular orphanage. This is a place where kids who have their own special abilities are being protected. They're being kept, and they're being watched over by some members of the Bat family, some people who aren't. It's people who are really lucky to be alive. Let's put it that way. Commissioner Gordon is actually like a father figure protecting these kids, and you've got the Red Hood there. You've also got Lady Deathstroke, who is, you know, it's Deathstroke's daughter, and she plays a part in this. So what happens is, through a series of events, which are in the first two issues, these people they get smashed together in the same place, and these are people who ordinarily wouldn't get along. Like these are anti-villains, you know, villains with a little touch of good in them, who are often like they're doing bad things, but they are often pitted in a light that makes them not so bad, versus anti-heroes, which are people who are going to save the day, but they're going to do bad things to do it, and they're smashed together in this world by Tom Taylor, and it's just incredibly done. So by the time we get to the third issue, some shit's gone wrong, right? Like we've lost some characters, some really heart-wrenching, heartbreaking moments. These kids have become attached to some people that you never really thought they would become attached to. Like, you know, Cheetah, who is in this book, has got a little child friend who calls her a good kitty, and she's the only one allowed to call her a good kitty, and she lets it ride because she's she likes these kids. And this is not inside the mainstream DC universe, right? Like this is just a kind of an Elseworlds tale, if you will. But you've got a kid, Lolita. She's 14 years old, and she likes things like ponies, but she also knows how to kill a man 6 ways with her hands, because she's been hanging out with Lady Shiva and Cassandra Cain. Gareth, he's a 7-year-old, and he likes tree lobsters, which is this little mini club that like Solomon Grundy and the Crawler have joined up.
I thought you were going to tell me it was scorpions or something.
No, I wish that would be weird and present another set of dangers. But Gareth, you know, he can survive the harshest environments, and he carries like if you need somebody to carry like 100-pound rucksack and run for 4 miles, he's your dude. And Zayd is 12, and he likes seeing things blow up, and he can crush a skull with a slingshot at 50 paces. Like, he's a badass. Matilda, who is 8 years old, and she's actually Cheetah's little sidekick. She is trained to strangle a pompous princess with her own golden lasso, which is going to play into a big part of the story. And so they've kind of become a family unit, which is not what you expect from these characters. And they're put between a rock and a hard place at this story. And what ends up happening is they have to vacate the school. They got to get the fuck out. And they go on what can only be described as one of the most insane road trips of all time, which includes a Batmobile, 2 school buses full of kids, 3 anti-heroes, 1 actual hero, a police commissioner, 1 dog, 41 children, and 6 supervillains. Um, in the middle of what can only be described as hell on earth unleashed, and everyone wants to just rip these people in half because they can sense where the anti-life equation is not. Like the anti-life equation has led all people, both mundane people, people like you and me, normal people, we can sense it, but it's infected super villains as well. And they can use all of their tricks, all of these things that make them like you always wondering like how the fuck is this person a supervillain? Like somebody like the Mirror Master, like that's kind of a lame thing until you realize that everything in the world is a reflective surface, and there is an insane cannibalistic psychopath reaching through any reflective surface to pull children into it or pull people into it. Things like a school bus. Like you remember being a kid and you'd always watch that bastard driving the school bus and make sure he wasn't looking at you as you were doing things that you were supposed to not be doing. Yeah, that mirror. Yeah, imagine Deathstroke's driving your school bus and he's that bastard that's going to get you in trouble. But all of a sudden, a hand reaches out and just claws his face off because that's what
Good
you're looking at.
times.
Yeah, it's terrifying. But these people are not without their own. I mean, like I said, Lady Shiva's a part of this. Cassandra Cain is a part of this. They are not ill-equipped. They're just finding it really hard because the numbers are against them. Solomon Grundy, who is a force in his own right, can stave off so many people, but he's going to eventually be overwhelmed, which really kind of fucks up his poem if he dies on a Monday.
It won't mess up his poem because it's not going to matter anyways. He's going to keep saying what he said.
Well, to a point, but that's one of the things that Tom Taylor does really in a really clever way is he takes these moments and it sounds like it's a highly stressful situation, and he injects these little gems of levity in there. Like the cheetah being called a good kitty, or somebody mentioning that if that Solomon Grundy can't die because it'll mess up his poem. Like he just throws these little tidbits in there, and it just really elevates the story into something that it otherwise wouldn't be. Now, I'm not going to tell you how the story ends because I really want everyone to run out and read this book. Read the first issue or the first part of the series if you can get your hands on it, but definitely read this because it's a fun look at some of the people that I think are beloved in the DC universe, even though they're bad guys, quote unquote. And it just for me personally, and people may not know this about, my favorite character in the DC universe is Wonder Woman. My favorite Wonder Woman villain is, of course, the Cheetah. And she plays a huge role in this. And it's so funny seeing this sociopathic murder machine who's half animal, half human, protecting children like they're her own litter, while at the same time threatening them all. And being kind of the last line of defense from the world ending. And all of these people have their comeuppance. Like they all have their moments. Like no good deed goes unpunished in this book. But it for what it sounds like, it is one of the most heartfelt books that I've read in a long time. And that's insane to say because you're like, well, everything you said just sounds like kind of like a video game, or like there's like it's really exciting, it's edge of your seat, it's fun to read, but there's no fifis, and that's untrue because this book is chock full of the fifis, man. Like there is an element of the family that you choose versus the family that you are born into that gets played up amazingly in this book. Tom Taylor he has this unique ability that is rare among writers, even great writers. And I consider Tom Taylor a great writer, and this is why. He has the ability to reach in as you as the reader and rip your heart out of your chest while literally showing you on the page somebody having their heart ripped out of their chest. And he makes you feel all the emotion of that metaphor. That is very rarely delivered. Like only a few people in the world can actually pull this off because it can either be hokey or it can be it won't carry the weight that the writer intends. Taylor makes that happen, Um, and it really does help that he's joined with Carl Mostert, who, man, he has a weird drawing style, and I say weird, but it's not. It's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous, but it's hard to peg. His anatomy kind of has this Gary Frank feel. I was pulling up a piece of it so I could look, but the facial expressions go cartoonish. So there's a major character in this book, and as they're drawing, they're grimacing, but their face is almost, if you look at the outline, it's almost the shape of like a Rick and Morty character, but the texture of the page is done almost in a Raphael Grandpa way, or people who are in that school. There's almost maybe an anime influence on it that you don't see a lot. It's just incredible. Like it brings a weight out that this book needs to function in the way that it wants to. This is the perfect storm for this story, and it's incredibly fun. Like I said, it's entertaining. It is violent. If you're somebody who needs the hyper violence of a book like Crossed, and not to the point that Cross goes, but it toes that line. There's blood, guts, and gore everywhere. They're like, this book is not afraid to kill kids, because that happens, and it happens on the page, which is something that you don't see a lot. So a lot of times children, at least, are, if something happens to them, it happens to them off the page, because that's something that people can't stomach. This book doesn't shy away from that. It's here for it. It's going to turn your expectations on your head, and you're going to love it for it. You are absolutely going to fall in love. Yeah, I say that. I hope you will. You might not, but if you don't, I have to question your taste as a person.
So the question on all of our minds is Kite Man in it?
Kite Man is not in this part, which I
Gotcha.
want to say, I forget. I think Kite Man might have showed up in the regular series.
Gotcha.
In a blip, but yeah, I mean, that's the type of character that you would expect.
Yeah, when you were saying all of these kind of rogues gallery type people that aren't maybe frontline rogues gallery, that's what made me think of Kite Man, because he's more D-list than that.
and it's such an on the nose character that, like, I honestly have to believe he had to have shown up at some point, because and again, I am reading this last issue after a 2-month hiatus of not reading comics. Right. And the other series came out long ago, so I'd have to go back and find out for sure, because again, we read a lot of comics, and I don't.
Oh yeah, I struggled so much reading comics this week just from trying to remember what was happening in the previous issue.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get it.
That's gonna be a hurdle, I think, for us as the new books get kickstarted, because there are several series that I am incredibly excited about diving back into, that if I have no idea what was happening in them.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm excited about it, but it's going to take me a minute to get my bearings on
to remember where you were. Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious, like, on that note, and this is stepping away from the book. By the way, go pick up DC Unkillables. That entire miniseries is badass.
Nice.
I'm kind of curious from you guys, are there any, and this, I should give credit where credit's due. I saw a post by our buddy Jason Wood asking people what miniseries that they were excited about that was kind of interrupted or postponed due to the COVID. Mine is going to play into my things that you should pick up next week. So I'm gonna postpone my postponement till then. But are there any series that you guys are giddy about getting back into?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Reaver.
Reaver, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been waiting for that second volume to get going. So,
well, yeah, a lot. Of course, Reaver. Looking forward to getting back into the new Batman series, the new regular Batman series. I was really liking the direction that had been taken. All the, well, not all of them, but a lot of the X titles.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, not having Immortal Hulk for weeks on end is stupid. I don't like that shit at all. I mean, I feel like I could go on and on. I'm ready for all of them to kick back in, so I can get back
for sure
that I was anticipating every single week.
Yeah.
So, question that is kind of market related, but do you think this guy will affect the books that you stay on? Are there going to be some fringe books that because you haven't read them in a couple of months now, you're going to probably be like, nah, I'm good not reading this anymore?
No, I cull mine on the regular. If I hadn't culled it already, the COVID's not going to affect my my culling rate.
I can see several books getting trimmed.
I feel the same.
And I try, so I'm somewhere in between. I do try to stay on top of my culling, to use Matt's phrase, because full disclosure, law student, most of the money that I have, is borrowed to keep me from either my husband and or from my student loans, provide entertainment while I'm in school. And so that's just, I spend a little bit of that on comics. So I try to stay on top of it so I'm not wasting my money.
Right.
There has been a unique effect on my reading habits that I think is entirely because of the way that things have been in the last 2 months. I could see myself moving towards trades on some that aren't, if there's a series, like I'm never going to go towards trades on a book like Immortal Hulk, right? Like that's not
right.
I need that book because like Matt said, not having it is in fact
it's stupid.
I'm a poet. I'm a poet, guys.
That I want that on a T-shirt. But and there are many series that come out from like your booms, some on Image and stuff that I want the miniseries. Like I need to know that story because they're enclosed. But when it comes to big two stuff and when it comes to ongoing books that are going to last for a while, there are some books that I've been picking up monthly that I very, very much see myself stopping doing that and just reading the trades or reading the collected editions or, I don't think that there's anything that I'm going to move monthly towards Comixology. But I read stuff on Comixology on the regular anyway, right? Like that's not going to be a new thing for me. But I could see me stopping when I go to my previews. I see my previews monthly list getting a little bit less, and me tacking on a few trades and collected editions. That's the way the books are being written right now, and I don't think we always acknowledge that, and we've acknowledged that on the show several times. Books are written in 6-issue arcs now,
right.
They're written in arcs. I shouldn't limit it to 6 issues, and we acknowledge that. But I don't think I ever really understood just how much of an effect that does have on the flow of the story until the world ended for 2 months, and I have been reading trades and collected editions and these full stories, miniseries, just in one jump, like in one chunk.
Right.
And it completely changes my understanding of the story, and it changes my appreciation of the story. And so I could see myself going towards that. I haven't committed to that yet, but it's something. I was actually having this conversation with my husband the other day, who doesn't give two solid shits about comics. And he was just like, wait, are you telling me that you might stop buying the little magazines? And I'm like, yes, that's what I'm telling you. And he was just like, do you have the COVID? Are you running a fever?
See, I don't see me going away from monthlies, but I do see me trimming back some of my monthlies, like maybe the fluff, and going to getting some more OGNs, because that's really where I've been focused during the past couple of months, is on reading OGNs more so than collected editions. You okay? Somebody just hit the floor or what?
Yeah, I can't believe what I'm fucking hearing. You're going to stop buying monthly comics and go to trades. I just picked myself up off the floor. It's like drugs for me. I need my fix on a regular basis. I can't wait till Thanksgiving to eat my meal. I gotta eat on the regular.
Well, I'm still gonna get my fix, right? Like, I'm not saying. So it's kind of like I'm still gonna get the monthly nice glass of whiskey because I need my nice glass of whiskey. But instead of buying the cheap beers one at a time, I might just wait and buy the 30-pack.
I cannot recommend you do that. But there's never a good reason to buy a 30-pack of beer.
You can't.
That is no wise decision started with, I got myself a 30-pack.
You can't fuck up my metaphor. Just go with it. Like I said, it's like different strokes for different folks. I read a ton digitally and Matt, like you've said it before, you just can't. Digital's not for you. Craig likes reading things in a different way than I like reading things, and that you like reading things. So I think it's all about the experience that the reader wants, and I think in a way that it's going to have an effect on the way that I consume my media.
That's fair, and that's why it's interesting that there's three of us and three different answers came out of that, because I think that's going to be the case.
No, I totally agree. As far as sitting down and reading a trade, one trade at a time, can only be, as far as I can see, only be beneficial in how you enjoy the story if you don't have longer breaks in between. I just can't. Right. Waiting for the trade to come out, this wouldn't work for me. I need to know what the fuck's going on in Mortal Hulk this week, and I can't wait for it to come out in weeks on end. I can't. I can't.
I agree. I'm right there with you on that, Matt.
Yeah, that will not be the book that I wait for the trade on. X-Men will not be the book that I wait for the trade on. Yeah, Wonder Woman, maybe I can wait on the trade. There are some, like, one of the, like, and I'm kind of doing it, I was going to do it already, but some of the other books related to the X titles, Hellions or Gen X, if that's a thing, I'm not getting those books usually.
You can't just say X and then something. I mean, we may be coming to that by the way they're milking this thing, but we're not there yet.
Yes, I mean we're pretty goddamn close.
I will be getting my X Milkman.
Yeah.
Great format.
Yeah. X Cars. I can't wait for the next issue of X Cars.
I have to be careful with how I talk about milking and men. So there's a. Anyway, so you guys ready to talk about what might be coming out next week, or what you think folks should grab next week?
I'm looking forward to X Milkman.
Not me.
Matt draws the line.
Yeah.
Well, what are you picking up next week, Craig?
I'm interested to hear what you two have to say, but I'm going for Basket Full of Heads, #7. This is the last issue in the series. Joe Hill, Leo Max, Rico Murakami. This is part of the Hill House stuff on DC at DC Comics. And a little subplot here is it's time for a final swing of the axe. In the darkest, coldest hours of the night, June Branch finds herself up against the dead-eyed killer who abducted her lover. So there you have it.
You said this is ending at 7?
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Well, not all story arcs are 6.
No, that's for sure. That's interesting.
It's been one of my favorite of the Hill House.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is a book that I started. We only had one issue of it, and I absolutely fell in love with this book. So much so that I immediately found the artists online, followed them, sent them emails, messaged them, and then traded them money for a page. And that book is King of Nowhere from Boom Studios. #2 comes out next Wednesday. When do new comics come out again? What's that like? I don't remember. And this is written by Maxwell Prince, and the art is by the amazing duo of Tyler and Hillary Jenkins. I cannot wait. This book was a surrealist, psychedelic, anxiety-inducing heavenscape for me. There's nothing about this book I didn't fall in love with. From the first issue, the main character wakes up. We don't know if he's in a drug-induced haze. We don't know if he's in a dream. We don't know what it is, but he's in this world where nothing is linked to reality. He walks into a bar, and there's fairy people there. Robert Englund is blowing bubbles while he's sitting in the booth. The cover of the book was the main character sitting on a park bench holding a balloon string that was attached to a koi fish while a river flowed beneath him. Everything is meant to throw you off your game, and that is the type of storytelling that I think comics thrives. I think it's uniquely suited to do that. I loved this book, and I cannot wait to finish the series. The hardest thing for me is not going to be buying another page out of the second issue if it's just as gorgeous. I'm gonna have to fight myself to do that.
So I'm 1 for 1. Interested to see if I go 2 for 2. I'm picking your guys' books.
Oh, nice. You pegged mine?
Yeah.
So, how did you guys reliably find a source for what the hell is actually coming out next week is my question.
I go to Google and I type in new comics this week, and then I go to comics list, and then it gives you a list of this week's, and then it gives you next week's.
Well, see, I looked at that, and I couldn't tell if that was reliable or not based on what's been going on.
It's reliable.
Okay. Well, I don't have any of that information. So,
okay.
I'm just going to, again.
I was going to say I also use Comic List. I didn't know that Craig used that. but that's also the site.
Yeah, that's the one I use. Yeah.
Yeah. I've always used that site, but over the past few weeks when I've looked at it, I frankly couldn't tell if it was reliable or if it had been updated.
Until last week, when there wasn't any new books coming out, it was just trades. But last week, they started updating it again.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I'm going to go. So I don't have any books that's coming out next week. It was going to be like Christmas for me. I don't know what the hell is going to be there for me.
I'm going to give you a Christmas present after you tell us what your choice is.
Go ahead. Give it to me now. My choice is lame.
Butcher of Paris, the final issue.
I saw number 5 is coming out. Did we already get the first 4? I thought we were only on the first 2.
No, it's been out.
Okay. See, that one specifically I saw, and I thought, okay, this list is unreliable because I don't have the first 4. I didn't get the first 4.
Yeah, no, we got them all.
Great. Okay.
Well, go read that one, Christmas present. It sounds like I disappointed it. Yeah, what were you going to pick?
I just had, another one of these True Believers reprints. The Avengers Celestial Quest reprint. That was on the shelf.
What number was that?
Well, it's a reprint of the original Avengers Celestial Quest from 2001. This is number 3.
I don't think I've read that.
I know I didn't read it.
I'll have to go check that out. What makes this exciting for you?
That it's available for me to read.
You
are a man of simple wants and needs.
That's where I have
it is available. That's all that matters.
Yeah, that's the benchmark I have for my comic book reading
in the current comic world.
Yeah, yeah.
It is available to purchase. That's all I needed to know.
Yeah. Sound like me in my early 20s. Are you available? Come on. Well, yeah. So go check out Butcher of Paris, kids. I know I'm excited for Matt to get those. I think I got the 3rd issue, so I don't know. There was some weirdness with how they came out.
There was some weirdness because we didn't actually sign up for the book ahead of time.
Gotcha.
We signed up because we found out about it afterward. Mm-hmm. So Kapow, our local comic book store, has been having to kind of backwards go get them for us. So if you don't have all your issues, get with them and have them order them.
Or get the trade.
When it
comes out. But Matt's not going to do that.
He's not.
Well, I've already got the first couple, so.
Yeah. Well, shit.
Exactly.
We got anything else, guys, that we want to run down the list this week?
No, I think that we covered it. Yeah. Have a safe and happy Memorial Day.
Yes, absolutely. And that I was going to mention, and I didn't say it, but one of the reasons besides fear of being punched by Castro that I chose to talk about DCeased Unkillables. At the end of the book, there is a monument to some of the figures that were lost in the story, much in the vein of like the Avengers monument from that era. Right. But this is some of these side characters, and it's an in memoriam thing, and that was going to be my tying into Memorial Day.
Nice.
That was fitting that it came out when it did because it's all about lost heroes.
I'll be honest, me choosing the nom was completely coincidental. But it worked really well. So.
It does. Yeah, have a happy, safe Memorial Day. But maybe stay home. Maybe don't go to that party.
Yeah.
Maybe don't go to that large conglomeration cesspool of.
Yeah, don't go to a party if you're going to go be around your family. Keep your social distance. Be smart, people.
Take a little masky mask.
Yeah, be smart.
Little hand sanitizer action. I got no plans. I'm gonna sit my butt at home and read some funny books. But other than that, what else I'm gonna
do? Study?
No, I'm in summer. I got nothing to study right now. I'm reading funny books. No, I'm gonna go forth and read some comics.
Woo! You threw me off with your the way you.
That was clever. That was
segued into that. I wasn't prepared.
That was
checking to see what your trigger finger is like there.
Jerry, right? It was quick though. That was impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I was going to call it Jerry's Revenge, but it didn't turn out that way. My man is sharp.
I'm working on like 4 hours of sleep. I'm doing all right.
Take a nap.